recorded again. So,
Sure.
um, so welcome, Marty. It is
Good
great to
morning and
have you
welcome.
here in
Thank you.
so many ways that I wasn't anticipating. But for those of you who aren't familiar with Marty, don't know him, Marty is from Calgary, as many of you people now know. But Marty is he's an entrepreneur. He is an advisor to business owners, and he is also an author of the book called Tiger by the Tail. Is that right, Marty?
Yep. Tiger by the tail,
Tiger by
99
the Tail.
secrets to tame and master your business.
Beautiful. And so, right now, COVID, there's a lot of negativity with COVID, but Marty and I were talking about how COVID is actually what reconnected Marty and I after 10 years and about 700 kilometers. And when I started thinking about what's going to help you show up powerfully for your clients, employees, and suppliers, I thought of Marty back in the day when I was in Calgary. Marty was the guy. I'm sure you still are, Marty. I'm just not
In
there.
my own mind, absolutely.
So so glad to have you here. Thank you for being here. Again, my apologies for the interruption. But as we were talking about, as our group, we were talking about getting started with the idea of today's call and conversation, which is really about better understanding how we can step up and show up for our employees and our clients and our suppliers during this time. And I know you and I talked a little bit about what to call it, because what we are noticing now is how people show up now is really going to be the value or the promise of their brand when this is all over. It's going to be what they're recognized for, the actions that they take now. And I know before we get started, I know you had a little bit of hesitation around understanding or the word brand and clarifying what that is. So maybe before we get started, can you just clarify for everybody on the call what a brand is and what we're talking about when we're talking about increasing or protecting the value of your brand through COVID?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. I think so often people, brand being a marketing term, sometimes people say, oh yeah, I got a logo. Well, your logo is not necessarily your brand. Your brand is really the opinion or the what people think of when they think of your company. So, or you even as an individual, right? That even individual people can have a sort of a brand as a leader, a brand as a communicator, a brand as a people person versus a get things done person. So all of those kind of descriptions are really kind of like a personal brand. And with your business, people know your brand as being, oh, they're always economical, they're always high quality. They have a space in their mind and a bit of a description with most of us, whether it's the dry cleaning guy or the car dealership or the bakery or the paramedical clinic. So we have this idea of this sort of story we wrap around a company. And that's really what I mean by brand, is that as I throw out a 7-Eleven, people can go, oh, 7-Eleven, this is what I think of when you say 7-Eleven. And that's really the brand that they've developed. And so proactively, all of us want to be making sure that with our companies that we're producing a brand that people connect with and feel warmly about and want to do business with, right? That they feel like it's a brand that supports them as a customer.
Right. It kind of reminds me too of the word personality, right? If somebody had to describe your
Right.
business, exactly like you said, what is the personality of that business?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I find it interesting because in the work that I've done, and I'm sure this parallels with the clients that you've worked with in the past, everyone usually talks about we're exceptional service. We show up powerfully for our clients. We're the best in the industry. And
Right.
this is really a time where that's put to the test, don't you think?
Oh, it absolutely is. And I think there's really an opportunity I was just saying to a client the other day, if you want to do more, like now's the time that you double down. When most of your competitors and most people are deciding to get quiet, now is really your opportunity to prove some of those things that maybe you have as sort of the bumper sticker for the business. So many times people talk about just that, those loose terms of, well, we're high quality, we're great service. But unless you substantiate those or really are out in the market proving it, what you find out is that your competitors are kind of saying those same things. Nobody ever says we're poor quality and we're bad service, right? Everybody sort of hangs their hat on those. So I like the idea that particularly at this point in time, that now's really the chance to say to your team, to be able to say, we have to prove good service. How do we do that? We have to prove our high quality. How do we go about doing that? And yeah, it's a great opportunity to step up and solidify the things that maybe in a better market you can just get by with just saying it, right? There's enough business. But now as business dwindles a little bit, I think you really have to double down to make those things a reality and prove it to people.
Right. No, perfect. Nicole throws in here in the chat, one of her favorite quotes is, your smile is your logo. Your personality is your business card. How you leave others feeling after having an experience with you becomes your trademark. I love that. So thank you, Nicole, because that
That is a
trademark
great line.
is exactly what we're looking for here at the end of COVID, right? When it's in the rear view mirror. So if
I
we,
think, can I
yes,
take that one step further? I think that's
please.
such a great message and great quote. And my challenge to owners, because I think all of us know a business owner who is that charismatic leader. But sometimes you have to be able to say, well, when you're not there or you're not the person delivering it or representing the business, is that personality, that smile flowing all the way through your team? Because I think all of us know businesses where we're like, the owner is so great, but when they're not there, it's a different mood in the business. Or when they're not the one that I'm interacting with. I had a dentist previously where the dentist was just fantastic, but all of the people in the office were miserable. And one day I just sort of came to the realization I can't deal with 3 miserable people as much as I love the dentist. And
Yeah.
so that they tarnished that brand because there wasn't continuity across the team with that element of smile and charisma and energy and enthusiasm for me as a customer.
Right. So that's a great lead in actually, because today we wanted to talk about how you can show up for clients, employees, and even suppliers. But let's actually take that, let's take it to the employee piece, because what you're talking about is, you're right, that culture or that personality has to resonate throughout the whole organization. And the vast majority, I can't think of one business right now that isn't struggling somehow, right? But probably the first place you need to show up, and correct me if I'm wrong, is actually with your employees, to start communicating with them, and let them know kind of the position that you're in, and what this is going to look like for the organization. Can you share with us any examples or any advice on how entrepreneurs, business owners can now show up for their employees in this time of crisis?
Sure. I think back to my own experience. In 2010, I took over a marketing agency that was publicly traded. The previous year had done about $12 million in sales. And when I got there, I say it was like the Titanic on fire. It wasn't just sinking, it was on fire. People were jumping. We were losing customers, cash, and staff as fast. And I had to look and say, okay, what is the first place that I need to stop the bleeding or try to halt this loss of everything? And if you remember, sort of in that time, in 2009, Christmas was canceled, and things just really went into a tailspin fast. And the first place I started was with the staff, because I thought, well, if the staff isn't here to deliver services, it doesn't matter about the customers. And I realized that the previous president had been there, had just he was sort of shell shocked by the whole economics, and I think it's very there's a mirror to what's going on today. So the tendency is to get quiet, but you know that the staff are on their phones, they're checking what's going on, they're getting all the headlines, they're hearing all the bad news. Layoffs are taking place. Their first thought is, what am I getting laid off? What's happening with us? And so I think a reassuring message to the team, and I don't mean a dishonest message. If there's the possibility you might have to lay people off temporarily, I think you have to let people know that. But I think you have to let them know about, it's a great place to be a leader, to stand up and say, hey, we are going to weather this. Here's what I'm doing with the business. You guys are all valuable to me. Here's what we need to do action-wise. Here's what we need to do with our customers. Here's what we need to do when we deliver. And sort of give them really specific things that they can do. I had an experience years ago with a guy, Doug, and Doug and I, he was the owner, walking past his help desk, and he had deemed it the year of customer service. Again, one of those big brand banners. And so as we got a coffee and walked past his help desk of about 40 people, I grabbed one of the guys and said, hey, there's a theme this year. What is it? And the guy sort of stumbled over, oh, it's something about the customer. And then when I said, what does it mean to you? He said, and was deer in the headlights. And I said to him, I apologize. I'm not really putting you on the spot. I'm putting your boss on the spot. But as Doug and I talked, I said, there's 40 people on a help desk who are talking to customers every day. We've talked about customer service in big terms, but they don't know in their day-to-day actions. Does that mean smile when you're on the phone, make an offer of additional services or a bonus? So I think with employees, you have to really bring it down to be real tactical, tangible things. So exactly what can we do to show up better for our clients right now? And that's when people get that reassuring message, I think, from an owner of, hey, the business is okay. Yes, there's going to be some bumps here. This is, if I have to lay you off, it's the intention is temporary. We want, you're a key part of this team. And uh, really, you've got to be, you're about the only positive voice people have outside of all the negativity they're hearing in the media.
Yeah.
So I think in that capacity that there's such a need right now for an entrepreneur and owners to step up and realize the last thing you can do for your team is get quiet.
That's actually that's so important, Marty. This piece of positivity, right? There's very little positivity right now, and for you to mention that and reiterate that we're really the anchors right now for the employees and for the
Yes.
family. And this is
Yes.
where positivity is contagious. This is where we need to show up and not, get that armor up and make sure that the employees know that we've got things under control to the best of our ability. Can I share with you a little example of
Yeah,
a
please.
client
Yeah.
yesterday? It was so it's a client here in Saskatchewan that, again, like the majority of small business owners right now, they have to make some difficult decisions with employees. And so she reached out to all of her team and said, let's just have a conversation around what's happening. And I think what really worked well for her in that situation was that it was a conversation. It wasn't that her staff were being told what was going to happen. It was just a very open, transparent, honest dialogue around, we're in the middle of a situation. What ideas do you have? They felt like their voice was being heard. And what was amazing in this example is that she was pleasantly surprised with how her team wanted to show up
Yes.
100% powerfully,
Yeah.
right? 1,000% at this point. Like, let's just go out and give them more than we've ever given them before. And so I think what really framed that for her was going in and just saying, let's just have an open dialogue. What can we do? What can we
That's,
do and who can do what?
that is so important. I mean, I talk about this idea of leadership because, it's usually the owner that has to kick that off. But
Yeah,
you're right. When people are in a state of panic or concern, you have to be able to have that opportunity to bring them together and let them voice that.
yeah,
I have to be able to explain my stress and my worry so I can get back away from my crazy lizard brain in fight or flight mode and get back to a place of, okay, now I can be a team member. But you're right. What a great way to bring people together and create cohesion with your team to be able to say, what can we do, and make it a bit of a brainstorm.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I love that. I've said, connecting with all of your team one-on-one through this is really important, but also being able to do it, every week. If you typically have biweekly meetings, increase it to weekly. Connect with everybody every 2 days
Yeah.
just for 15 minutes if they're
Especially,
working remote, right?
right, especially, yeah, the remote piece too, right? You're right. I
Yeah.
think that's going to up the frequency of communication. Absolutely. Do you have any advice or tips for the entrepreneurs that will have to lay people off? It's a very sensitive subject. Nobody really wants to do it. It's nobody's favorite thing to do in the best of times,
No.
especially now, knowing what's on the line. Have you seen anything that's worked well for your clients or in the business community there in Calgary?
So I have clients that are in the process of laying people off. In fact, my clients range from businesses up to business just dropped 66% in the last week. So, and I've said to them, listen, the most important thing is the long game, right? As a business owner, you can't just be thinking about the employee. You have to be thinking about the ecosystem and the community you have, which is supplier connections, all the customers you serve, your staff, and yourself as the business owner. I had an owner who said, well, I'm just going to go get a $150,000 line of credit on my house so that I can keep making payroll. And I said, well, that's great, but that's not considering all the groups, right? So you got to remember that you're an important, valuable person there too. Without you, the owner, nothing else is going to work. But I like the idea that knowing that there's that whole ecosystem, you have to be able to say, if it means temporarily laying off some of your people so that that ecosystem remains, then that's what you need to do. I think an important message though with those people is to say, I don't know if this is going to go on for 2 weeks or if this is going to go on for 10 weeks, but even at 10 weeks, it's a temporary situation. And to let them know that your full intention in doing this is that this is a temporary situation. I found that for a lot of the employees, by having that honest conversation, by, as you said, making it a conversation and dialogue back and forth, that people have been pretty open to the idea of, well, I'll get on the EI program, and hey, but if you still need me to do stuff, like I still want to be engaged, and I still want to, and I think that's one of the big things is with clients who have temporarily laid people off, I've said, continue with a weekly meeting, right? Get on Zoom, get on the technology, and spend some time, even if there's no agenda. Like, it can be just that, as Google says, it's a hangout.
Right.
And keeping that connection of your team is important, because in one case, I know a business owner where he had laid people off very quickly, almost reactively to what was happening, not necessarily in his business, but in the marketplace. And then sort of said, well, when this comes back together, I'll call you. And I said, well, what are they going to do? What if this lasts for 4 weeks or 8 weeks? Can you imagine you've been laid off and you haven't ever heard back from the boss? You'd presume that, I guess, that job's over and you'd be looking for something new. And I think for most of us, we're so committed to our team, is just reassuring them and giving them updates on, hey, this is where it's at.
So I'm hearing communication,
Oh,
frequent communication, up the communication. We've got positivity. One of another client actually had great success too in bringing the team together, and the team voluntarily, there were some individuals that were in the position where they were living from home and said, you know what, this isn't life breaking for me, right? I don't have a family to feed. I will opt in to be the first person. If you need to let someone go, I'm opting in. So again, it was giving them that space to have giving them that safe space to have the conversation around who's in dire need of money, right? Like, who's in what financial situation right now, and then having those staff members voluntarily say, I can be the first, I can be the second. Job sharing opportunities. Some
right.
individuals said, let's just partner up and we'll share this job to kind of cut back. So I think opening up the communication. Yes.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think the communication is so important, but it's also, well, there's two thoughts that come to mind. Communication is you mentioned it, sort of creating a safe space, right? You think of oftentimes somebody who's a military leader, and it's like, you guys listen, I'm talking. And I think you're right. Inviting people in to say, sitting down with your team and saying, hey, let's have an open dialogue. Here's what's going on with the business. So let me explain the business circumstance to you, where we're at, and what we need to be able to do. But now I'm open to how we go about that. Has anybody got any ideas? And open up that dialogue in a space where you say, this isn't just me talking at you. This is us communicating together. And I think the second word was, I'm really striving for connection, right? Not just communication, but I really want to feel some speaking from the heart. I said to a client earlier in the week, he said, I'm not really great at standing up from front of the group. I mean, I kind of fumble my way through my talks. And I said, that really doesn't matter. I said, polish is the least important thing right now. The important things, I'd rather hear you stumble and look at notes and try and, mince your words, but know that you're speaking from the heart, that there's authenticity there. And that's what people really need to see to create that connection.
I think that's so important, Marty, because I think what I've noticed before, even for myself, it was always get everything right? Make it look great, know your speech,
Totally.
like rehearse it, know exactly what you're going to say. And I think this morning is a great example. Like, polished it was not, right? Like, I sent the wrong invitation out, but I think what really is coming through is the intention that people have behind their action and words, to show up, to provide support, to, whatever information that we can get out there that people can share. So I think that's really important for anybody who is listening right now that are like, oh, I don't quite have it right? Or I don't know what to say. I find even those words are powerful. I don't know what to say right now.
I think they're actually more powerful than so interesting. You've probably gotten dozens of those. Here's what we're doing during COVID-19.
Yes.
Emails, and they're like this from the president's desk, and it's all formal and stuffy. And after the first few, I just delete them now. I'm like, what's it? Oh, delete. I get it from, everybody. Every company I've got a subscription with, just anybody I've at some point given my email to. Some of them I'm like, I don't even know who this is. And I think about the ineffectiveness of that. And because it's not really authentic, people are going through the policy kind of process, right? Well, we should mention to all of our clients and all of our
Yeah.
people in our community. But I love the idea of, yeah, if you got on and said, I'm writing this letter and I really don't know what to say, but and fumbled through that, I could read it and know there was a person behind it. A
Beautiful.
little video would be way more effective than these form letter type of emails that we go, well, we blasted that out to 2,000 people, so everybody knows that we're still open.
Yeah.
I never read it. I don't know that you're open, but I got to tell you the impact of, I've said with a number of clients, if things are slowing down, your people have more time now than ever to phone every one of your clients and just ask, not sell them something, but ask that question of, how are things with you? How is it affecting your business? How's life at home? Do you have kids, right? And having just some real conversation. But I've had clients where, a good example, clients who sell chemicals of all things across Western Canada. They've found that by phoning some of the guys, some of them are working from home, some of them are still on skeleton crews at these production facilities. But guys are turning around, and after they have some good personal conversation, guys say, well, I should order some more. Oh, well, that's not why I was phoning. But yeah, well, why don't we top everything up? When this ends, we'll need extra stock. So yeah, put me in. And they're actually getting business from these phone calls. And we've sort of talked about how that business, or being able to book into the future or take a future order, or is a little bit of a reward for being the type of business owner and team who are reaching out to make that connection. So that's where, you and I were talking about making connection, communicating with people, and really showing you care now. In the future creates your brand equity, where people go, oh, I remember the story, and they know that those were the guys that actually phoned when nobody else did. Those were the people that were more responsive. Those were the people that seemed to really care what was going on in my life, not just about, hey, are you guys going to still be on the weekly order path? It's really not about the business. It's about that connection and care, and that will lead to business, maybe at a reduced level right now. But boy, when business comes back, when people are allowed out of the house and they're like, oh my God, I want to go for dinner, the restaurant that took the time to phone them or email them or do something personal, or threw out, hey, we'll deliver it right to your door, we know your favorite order, that's the place where I'm like, oh, I got to book there.
Right. Right. Having owned a restaurant before, right? You know exactly exactly what you're talking about in that
Lots of
space.
them, yeah.
Oh, so with the employees, then just one other, and then we're going to move into clients, because I think we're just
Okay,
organically going in that
sure.
direction. And this is a good bridge, because I know that one of the clients that I worked with, we were talking about building a toolkit for her to share with the employees. So yes, let's talk about the policy, right? Here's the policy. Here's who stays home. Here's who comes to work. This is what our what do I want to say, kind of workplace safety rules are going to look like.
Right.
There's a lot of construction businesses that are still operating, so they need to get
Absolutely
on top of this. But the other thing that was extremely positive for her in terms of the reaction from the employees was giving them tools, right? If we have to lay anybody off, here's the link for EI. Here's what the process looks like. Here's what your medical benefits still look like. Here's what they cover, right? Here's what, so it was just, here's the tools, here's the resources. And also I find, and this kind of dovetails into the client piece, but being able to provide links to local resources, right? Here's some mental health practitioners in our community that you can work with. Are you seeing any other lists, or do you have any other advice for maybe potential resources or tools we can start to use to build that toolkit?
Well, actually, you know what? In a lot of businesses, it's a lot of the things you've mentioned. I think that I know there's a couple of the automated payroll services who have quickly adapted their platform to just have a toggle button that automatically moves people into the EI support program that the government has
Wow.
set up.
Okay.
I've been, I mean, for my clients, a lot of them being business owners, I've been sending out links and information about the government funding for small business through BDC and EDC. And, but yeah, I found that you're exactly right, that if people are going to work from home, and it's funny because there's almost like this little cottage industry that's popped up about how do you work from home? That it's amazing that you realize that you and I might be on Zoom all the time, but there's lots of people that aren't. And then you say to clients like, or your staff, okay, you're going to go home. And they're like, do we have a corporate Zoom account? So
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes the most basic of, here's the login to this. and providing them with a cheat sheet. I had a client who verbally went through all sorts of things really, really well. And he sat down with all of his team and then let them know about some of the layoffs and went through everything on a sheet of paper. And finally, at the end, I said, did anybody ask for the sheet of paper? He goes, well, yeah, everybody was sort of like trying to cheat off of it afterwards or kind of get a peek at it. I go, that's because you talking verbally really allows about 1 in 5 people to pick up all that information, and the rest of us need to see it or have a reference piece. So could we make that into a cheat sheet? He was like, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. So I think sometimes just remembering, like, yeah, if people are leaving the office, providing them with something online or a physical sheet, and where you can, as you said, to be able to say, these are the numbers. I've already talked to this HR group. We've already talked to this counselor. We've got, and you've done some of that homework for people. But again, to your point about conversation and communication, here's what we've laid out, but what else do you need? And we'll do the work to go find those resources for you. We won't just leave you, again, as a bit of an island or disconnected.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So clients, I think this is on everybody's mind as well. There's a lot to do with how we can show up for our clients right now. Tell us what you're thinking there.
Well, the big thing, I'd like to be able to reassure clients that, hey, we are in business. If you're not in business, and so it varies. So there's obviously, I've got clients, and I'm sure you do, who have had to close their doors. In some cases, it's mandated by government to say, and other people have just started to lay people off because they're like, we're slow. And across all of those cases, I think the message with clients has to be one of first connecting, letting them know, hey, we are in business. I got a message from somebody, a print shop, and he said, we're here, we're safe, and we're still in business to serve you. And that was their headline. And that was the way they launched their COVID-19 announcement. So they said, listen, when you come into our print shop, we're going to stand further away. We will not, we're going to keep we're going to be social distancing at the front desk. Everything is wiped down. Here's how we clean the shop on a daily basis. And he went through some of the logistics of it. But I love the message that the first thing he said, and I responded to him and said, this is fantastic because I don't know who's open and who's closed. And so the first message to me with customers is we're still open. In fact, again, my dry cleaner of all people, who's been sending out regular email communication, I emailed them and said, are you guys still doing pickups? Because they hadn't mentioned it. And they said, oh, absolutely, but just on an appointment only basis. And ideally, if you want to leave things at the front desk, we'll just pick it up from there and then we're not interacting with you. And I was like, great, but we're open, we're doing business. I think that's the number one thing I want to do with customers is let them know that. Tying in with that, if I'm not in a position, so I have a client out who's got paramedical clinics where they do a lot of massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, those types of services. They're mandated, they can't be open. But I've said, I want you to phone all the customers, to see how they're doing physically in their space. Physically, how are they doing? So support them that way and let them know, hey, if we open in May, do you want me to phone you right away to book you back in? So I'm like, if you can't book somebody into work today, book them into the future. I have a client who does training with Fortune 500 companies out of the US. All of his training for the spring has been postponed. And I said, can you let him know that there's going to be a frenzy of training that people want done come the fall? And so you're now booking into October. So I said, you give it enough window, but start booking times in October, November, December. Okay. And this week he booked $80,000 worth of training already. Now he's moved it from postponed to now I've got a new date for it, right? So It's revenue he can count on. So, but I think all of those kind of options come out of things from really that having the conversation. And I don't mean send an email, get on a Zoom call with every one of your clients, pick up the telephone, go what I call old school, right? Where you really hear somebody's voice. I think you know this, the math of this, but it's sort of that knowing that 7% of communication is words, and that about 38% is voice and tonality and sort of the personality that comes through in your voice. And then the balance is your body language. Yeah. So being able to, if I'm hand talking, I'm excited and you get it in my voice versus reading it in an email. So people that I've always said, most people say, well, we don't have time to phone all of our clients. You do now.
You do now. Yeah.
What better way to carry that momentum into the future and giving people the option to buy stuff still, whether it's delivery, whether it's, hey, we can ship it to your house. We can there's lots of ways to keep doing business, even if it's at a reduced level.
So yeah, two things there. Sorry. Oh, bye, pivot. Um, uh, uh, See, I'm not a great interviewer. I'm no Maria
No,
Bartioli.
I jump all over the map. So
There's so much happening. Before I forget, I just want to say that Jill has actually put into the chat, which is, I think this is extremely valuable, that local chambers and or business associations, looks like a lot of them are starting to post local resources. So instead of you having to do that work, turn to
beautiful.
your local chambers to see what resources they're putting out there. Okay, I wanted to share that. There's a lot of people shouting out to you, Marty, but this I think is an important piece as well. So when we're making the calls, and maybe this piece isn't so important, but reaching out to all the customers, employees can probably do that too, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
can put
absolutely.
up your list, and now that
Sure.
you've talked to the employees and the employees know what's going on and they
Yep.
feel that personality and they know what to share, giving that list of resources to employees as well. So in the event, I know that I had one client that got a little caught off guard with the response of a client that they were speaking with, a customer that said, you know, we're really stressed, all of this stuff is coming up, right? And there are going to be people that you speak to that might be going
Totally.
through those things. That same toolkit that was used for the employees, you can repurpose it for potential customers.
That is a great idea.
To just say, you know, if you're feeling these things, please look at our cheat sheet, right? And list of supports. We want to be there for you outside of what we do in our typical day-to-day business operations.
Right.
Here's some services for you.
I think that is the key message. We want to be here for you. We got you.
We got you.
Outside of our product or service.
Beautiful. Pivots. We've talked about pivots in previous calls. You mentioned some pivots where we might be moving from coming in to delivery, right? Services. A lot of businesses now are taking their service online, doing calls. Are you seeing any other really interesting and unique pivots?
Actually, you know what? Yeah, I was talking to somebody yesterday. She does a lot of displays for trade shows. And she's realized, well, there's not a lot of trade shows going on right now. So she does conferences, trade shows. She sent an email out and said, hey, everybody is going to be on Zoom. And oftentimes they're going to be talking to an audience. So why don't we have these banners that you can put up behind you? So just like on our call this morning, I could have a banner up here with my logo and everything on it. And so she has figured out 5 or 6 of their products that they can use on a Zoom call. Everything from a background to banners to anyway, I just was like, I messaged her and I said, it's brilliant that you've thought about this transition. The company's called Nexus Exhibits, and it's run by a great entrepreneur. And so anyway, that was a good one. There's so many I see where people are, I mean, I know a couple that have offered to, you know, everybody goes, well, I'll just get it from Amazon. But people that have transitioned to say, well, wait, I've set up a Canada Post account and now I can deliver. I've never delivered before, but we can do that.
Yeah.
I
Local's
mean,
more important than ever then,
yeah,
right?
I know a guy who his entire family has become the delivery unit. He's got teenage kids. They're not in school. They're in high school, but they both drive. And yeah, they've now been repurposed from children to the delivery squad. And they have a protocol that they say to people by email, here, this is when we deliver, this is how it's going to work. So I like that, you know, he didn't have staff to be able to do that. Everybody's busy in fulfillment, but he's like, where am I going to get a delivery squad from? Anyway.
There you go.
Yeah.
There was some of the big businesses that we've seen, the major corporations. Canada Goose announced that they are turning their factory into a factory to make scrubs and uniforms for hospitals. We've seen Bauer actually start to, it's not hockey gear anymore, it's face masks for medical teams.
Love it.
I know that even on a smaller level, my cousin who's a consultant with one of the top 5 consultancies in Toronto, she's turned her hobby of sewing into just making masks for medical teams. And it's amazing the community support and the goodwill that's coming out for her as a result of just pivoting and showing up. We've got this, let's all rally together, let's do it, right? So the pivots, if there's any way that you can pivot to show up for your community, right? Take something that you typically produced or manufactured and find a way to have that dovetail into what the community needs right now. There's a powerful window there for you.
I think that's a great recognizing that it's sometimes we don't have the ability to keep our business running, right? I mean, if you're in one of those industries where it's been mandated that you can't do anything. I have a friend, she does a lot of flight school work, and flight schools, because it's live training, is canceled. So all of a sudden she's like, I'm not doing anything right now. And I think you're right, that ability to go, okay, well, how else can I contribute to the community? There might be some commerce to it.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be the first time I've come across somebody who goes, yeah, in 2009 and 2010, I just started doing this because I got laid off. And now it's bloomed into a business 10 years later, right? So some of those things that you start off as I'm just trying to make an effort. I'm just trying to be supportive of the people in the community around me.
Yeah.
Some of that has potential to be a whole nother line of work.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, the whole idea of this call is about understanding what we do now has an impact once this is over, right? And that showing up
Absolutely.
powerfully for your community in any way you can, it serves you later on when this is over.
I think as Canadians, we always have that the first day of spring, everybody's quick to be like, I want to hit a restaurant. I want to hit a patio. I want to get out, go for a walk. I mean, there's just that explosion of the weather starting to turn. It's springtime. And I think on a bit of it's sort of like that on steroids, because as people spend more and more weeks in isolation, when you finally do get that lifted, and I don't want to say when that is, but at some point they start to relax those where you have the ability to do more, or a restaurant opens up. Well, if you don't think that the first 4 weeks of being in a retail store where people aren't desperate to get back and get their haircut or go out for dinner 6 nights in a row, or there's that sort of tsunami reaction, or that elastic band effect of business coming back. And you want to be well positioned in people's minds from a brand perspective, but really from an authentic perspective, where they are like, they did so much. I really want to support those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot that you said there too. And I'm just thinking, like you said, that rubber band, I think that what we're talking about right now is what you can do right now to show up powerfully, but remember to stay front of mind throughout this whole piece, right? So even as if you do need to start scaling back on operations, if you do need to start scaling back on people for whatever reason, continue to show up, continue to be a voice, continue to talk about what you're doing, right?
I think, yeah, if you had it where operations start to slow down, it's actually the opposite. Your communication out to your community has to go up.
Okay, very smart, very
Yeah.
smart. Now, Ramona, so thank you, Angie. You've put in a link in here to what a local entrepreneur is doing in Weyburn. We'll be sure to check that out. Ramona actually, though, brings us into another sensitive area, which I think is really important to talk about right now. I know that I've seen it with all of my clients, with the exception of one who's in B2B, but it's about pricing.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people are automatically triggered into, oh, well, maybe I should do something for free, right? Because people aren't going to be able to afford it. What are you seeing if we're going to show up for clients? And we know, I think I saw the latest stat was that 44% of Canadians right now are off work or are about to be off work. So if we know that financial situations are fragile, what are your thoughts on maintaining our pricing structure, changing our pricing structure, free? Where do you think we should go with that?
So I might be a bit of a contrarian compared to most people. I'm a big fan of the idea of the last thing you want to do is drop your price.
Okay.
And I say that now, there's a little bit of price flexibility there, but inevitably what people do is they drop their price, and what they're really eliminating is their margin to be able to pay for their business, right? So their cost of goods sold gets covered all the time. So people say, well, I sell this for $1, it cost me 60 cents, so I'll sell it for 60 cents. Well, that's great. You've now covered it for your supplier, but you haven't covered anything for you. And it's a real short-term viewpoint, right? I'm a big fan of, I've been to the grocery store the last couple of weeks. I don't see the price of bread getting any cheaper. In fact, in some of those staple things like toilet paper, prices can be skyrocketing, right? Now people say, well, I don't want to be like that and be opportunistic, but I like the idea, where else can you add value, right? If you are going to charge me full price and then deliver it for free. So there's ways, I'm a big fan of, if you add value or add more into it, that's a way better way to think about things than kick it off with, well, we're going to drop our price. People, when they get scared, often think the only variable is price. But I like the idea that the idea that you can give something away and that's going to be successful for you and your team long term. I'd hate to be giving away product at a reduced price for the next 2 months and then get to a place where I've now run out of cash and my business is in such a bad place that as things start to recover, I don't have the ability to bring back my staff now. So I think you have to think beyond price reduction or slashing as a solution to realize you're supporting an ecosystem. And when you've got customers to support, you've got staff to support, you've got suppliers and all of that group, then you have to think beyond, well, I'll just cut my price, because cutting the price is going to only solves the problem for one group, and that's your customers. So I like the idea, if you want to be able to add something in, you can do that. But I think you have to be able to maintain a certain level of margin. And yeah, that's a much better long-term strategy. If your only ability is to change price, then you have a business problem beyond, your differentiation and your base product. There's a problem there. You should be able to make other adjustments, bundle things, add an extra service or time. There's other things that you could do that I think are way more effective.
Interesting. That it is a different perspective than what I think a lot of people are hearing out there. So thank you for that. I think that's important to kind of weigh that option too for a lot of businesses, because you're right, it is a short-term strategy, and the only one that wins in that situation obviously is the customer, as you mentioned.
Well, short term they do, but if you go broke, it doesn't help.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There is one member that I spoke with this week that has, and this kind of speaks to Ramona's case, where this is a membership-based, a subscription-based model is what this client has. And what she's opted to do is because clients would typically come into her facility, they can no longer do that. So she has said that she will extend their subscription by the time that they are closed. So if they had a 12-month subscription and they're closed for a month, that she'll extend the subscription by 50% of what they're closed. So it was refreshing to speaking to her too, right? Because it wasn't about dropping the price. It wasn't about, okay, well, if we're closed for a month, although she's still showing up powerfully online for clients, right? So she's still there, she's still connecting, that she would add 2 weeks on to the end of that membership. So I think what I noticed in that conversation with her is that there is, like you said, the positivity, but there's also a strength and a resilience that you hear in a business owner that isn't saying, okay, everything's free, right? Because it sounds like a fire sale. And it's like, okay, well, this person's still showing up powerfully for their business and their employees. And so it's a little bit of that positioning piece.
When I talk about, don't just drop your price, what I mean is, if you're selling something for, $20, you don't just suddenly go, well, we'll drop it to 15 and then people will buy it. Price is usually not the variable, right? That if I need your product or service, initially I'll have shopped on price, but once I've chosen you as my vendor, price becomes a very secondary thing compared to relationship, service, and the ongoing delivery. I mean, I know what you mean. In a situation, I know a daycare, they've done a great job of this, where they have said, well, we can't be open. We're mandated to not be open. But what we are going to do is, instead of having the fees that, let's say it's $1,100 a month, instead of charging $1,100, we're only going to charge $250. And what we're going to do is provide all these online resources, all these things that you can be doing. We're going to provide daily play sheets and game sheets. And so every day they email all their customers with links to YouTube videos they can do, educational stuff. And people are saying, oh, okay, well, hey, I'll do that for $250. Now, is it 100% of their revenue? No. But as an alternative to just throwing their arms in the air and saying, well, we're closed, they've come back and said, okay, how do we remain servicing and serving our clientele, the parents? What resources? And so they're doing a lot of the things we talked about. They're providing that cheat sheet of tools and ideas, and they're charging for it. So there's the ability, but they're doing that at a fair price, right? They didn't come back and say, well, we'll provide all this stuff for free. They don't need to give it to free. All the parents recognize a value. It's not the same value that they would if they were open, looking after children full-time all day. But I think that's a great example of sometimes you've got to be able to think about ways to say, well, if we can't be doing our regular business, is there something else we can be doing that at least keeps 25% of the revenue or 30%, or because
Yeah.
any percentage is better than zero.
Yeah, that's huge. And I think too, what I've noticed is as now we're kind of, do I use this word? I don't know, settling in to COVID. We're not in the triage stage, right?
Right.
Everyone's like, oh, okay. What I'm starting to notice is that more and more resources are becoming available. But where I suspect the opportunity is for the business owners is in organizing those resources so that they're presented in a way that, again, is kind of streamlined, it's efficient, it's not adding more chaos to the situation. It's here's what you need to know as a parent in this community for your kids, right? And because now we're just trying to siphon through things. It's like there's so much out there. Is where do we find the right support?
Oh, and actually, yeah, if you left it up to every individual client to have to go find that stuff versus providing them with a list, I mean, that list is really is gold. If anybody's ever been in that situation where they've had to go research anything. I mean, I've got clients who are asking me, well, I've been to the government website. This doesn't make sense. And even just sometimes you provide the resource and it's confusing enough as it is. So yeah, I think that guidance, that leadership, and some of the leadership is just, we've done the legwork for you. We're presenting it in an organized fashion. So it really is a valuable tool for you, is a great way that people, again, coming back to that brand, that months from now, they'll look back and go, man, that was really helpful. That really created value for me. I appreciated it so much. And when people feel that way about your company or you and your team, they're inevitably going to come back as customers.
Right, right. Yeah, I think this is where innovation, right? We have to start getting creative with clients. I think sometimes too, what I've noticed is, again, it kind of it speaks to what just talked about in the employee piece. Sometimes you don't need to have all of the answers, but asking the customers, asking the clients, what do you need, right? In this situation, how can we help you? You let us know.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's the two-sided. One is, I'd say to all the business owners out there, ask for help. Ask your staff for help. There's a vulnerability there. Brene Brown would appreciate me saying this. There's a vulnerability there to be able to to say, I don't have all the answers. I need help from you guys as my team. To say to customers, hey, we need help with this, or your suppliers. I have an opportunity where I was explaining to one of my suppliers, I said, I really want to bring somebody on to launch this marketing project. But I said, at this time, I'm really leery about making that big investment. And he said, well, that's funny because I'd like to be able to do something similar. So what if we partnered up and then we could split the cost? And then would you be comfortable going forward? I was like, oh, geez, that'd be great. But from that, it came from me saying, here's really what I need in terms of help. And I think asking customers what they need, how you can help them, and being willing to be a vulnerable leader and say, hey, I need help, is one of the best ways to create that sense of connection and community and have people show up in all sorts of ways when you ask for help. So I think don't be afraid to do that as a business owner.
Very powerful. Help is a big thing, right? Yeah. And I'm thinking about a client right now in the conversation that we had with respect to asking for help. And it was interesting because when we started to put this plan together, it felt somewhat linear, right? It was her speaking with the client and it was back and forth. And then what they realized in this process is that what they were doing, what the customer could actually do was to pay it forward, was to go and now help the community. So in this case, it was a personal trainer who now wanted to offer their nutrition piece free, so that they did say free, although they still had their membership package. But
right.
Here's something that doesn't cost us any money. It's already online. There's tremendous margin in it. So she was talking about being able to show up for members, saying, please keep your health in check, your nutritional health in check. But instead of letting us know what that's doing for you, go let the community know. Go share this forward, how important health is. Like, pass it on. That's how you can help going out, right? And so I think that is a big piece of what I've noticed too, is we use the words connection, we use the words community, we use the words communication. And I think this is what people are so hungry for now, especially through social networks, right? Is this feeling like people can connect.
Well, you see it all the time, right? People talking about, oh yeah, at 3:00 we're going to have an online hangout. We'll all get together as friends and just connect. that,
Yeah.
yeah, there's never been a time where connection is more obvious to people about,
Right.
the lack of. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the challenges that I put out to my team or to um, anybody in that community of mine, team, customers, vendors, is to be able to say, well, here, our mandate is to create that community and connection, and we're going to do it any way we can.
Okay. Yeah. Shane's asking, do you see this as a situation that will weed out the businesses and products that aren't benefiting people's health or the environment?
Uh, Well, yes and no. I mean, yes, there's certainly some of that, I think. Inevitably, it comes down to who runs a decent business,
Yeah.
right? You can have a second-rate product, but if you're doing a good job of reaching out to your customers and you're aware of that connection, communication, and leadership is sort of the way you work, then maybe it doesn't have a negative effect on your business versus the person who has the best product in the world and gets really quiet over the next 6 weeks. So I
Mm.
mean, in principle, yes, I think that's true. If you have a second-rate product and service and everything, that you are really going to struggle and suffer. But I think it's how we react to the situation that's really going to deem whether the business thrives into the future or if it struggles and if it survives at all.
It's a really good point. Really good point. I know for the last however many years it's been, 15, I've been advocating profit, 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 right? Profit is your safety net. Profit is not a dirty word. Like it's what's
No, it
going
is
to
not.
keep you alive. But I think right now, it's not so much about planning for profit, but it is about planning for communication, right? And like you said, maintain that communication, maintain that connection. That's what's going to get you through. So you brought up a really good example of just coordinating and cooperating uh, between suppliers or a client and their supplier. Do you have any suggestions or advice on with other suppliers that we might have as business owners, how we can start showing up for them? I know we're probably in a position where they should be starting to show up for us, right? But is there anything that we can put out the other way, do you think?
What I've seen with clients is just having the conversation, just phoning suppliers and asking even the question, how's it affecting your business? It's amazing the power of letting people talk. Like, well, this is what we're experiencing. Here's what we're seeing. We're worried about this. We're not just being able to voice that to somebody else who's in your space who could understand it is a powerful thing. So sometimes I think you just reaching out to them without necessarily an agenda is key. But then from that, inevitably, I think sort of naturally what happens is somebody says, well, what could we do together? Right. And so if you can come to the conversation with some of those ideas in your back pocket, great. But I think sometimes just saying, I don't have a solution, but what do you think we could do? That again, I'm now fostering cooperative relationship just by sharing the fact that, business is down for us too. Okay, well, what do we do together? And I think there's, even if before I get to an actual solution, I think that is the more powerful thing. If you actually find a way to be able to say, well, here's how we could reduce our orders, but we can keep ordering. Okay, great. I do have a client who just changed all their packaging to an emergency packaging. And so now they're able to send, they were sending it out through a distribution network, but they've repackaged it to be able to send it out direct to some of their clients. And because obviously the distribution group uses much bigger volumes in packaging. And so the packaging company they were talking to said, well, hey, we've got a whole nother line of individual stuff we could use. And it was from just having a conversation, almost phoning to be able to complain about, this is how bad it is for us. How is it for you? But in sharing that conversation, they turned to positive and what can you do? And figured out there's a whole nother line of packaging they can use. They've quickly moved to use that and are back shipping product. It's not 100% of sales that they would have had, but again, it's 35% of their regular sales that have come back because they've figured out a way to adapt.
Beautiful. I
Yeah,
really do think this is an advantage for entrepreneurs because we are just hardwired to face adversity, right? This is when our
totally.
creative juice just
Yes,
goes, what can we do? What can we do? Whereas sometimes in other spaces, I don't want to label, but sometimes in the employee mindset, it's I've lost my job and now it's like I'm hooped, right? But the entrepreneur, that visionary, that butterfly chaser, that
it's
anything
true.
sparkly out there, we have so got this. I'm actually so excited to see what we come up with because I think there's some very unique opportunities for us in this space. Again, I'll share, if I may, just another. I was just I was just floored with the ingenuity and the innovation this client had. But she actually reached out to Co-op, the food, the hardware, the gas,
Yeah.
and their supplier to her. And this is the same client that does the nutrition. And so they've built this whole campaign where she's going to go in on off hours and video the actual local brands of food and the nutritional content to be a part of that nutrition strategy. So it's just a win-win-win with, Co-op Foods, her, the local suppliers, and the food that they're putting on the shelves there. And just a shout out and love and cooperation. And again, it all just comes when our back is to the wall, right? It's like, okay, fire up, let's do it.
I think the beautiful part about that is coming from a place of help and engage and deliver, right? Like that's coming from a place of how do I contribute or add value? And I'll give you the flip side of that. I know a couple of the big oil companies have sent template letters out to clients saying, well, you're going to need to cut your price by 10 to 20% now. We're asking everybody across the board. Well, the response to those types of letters is, really? Yeah. So you want me to take all of this on the chin, and your method is going to effectively be to bully me into reducing my price. It is the worst approach to be able to not even need to have the conversation, but to be able to lead it with, this is our expectation, because, we have a relationship. Oh, yeah. Okay. But you quickly realize that sort of that whoever thought that big corporate strategy up of, we'll get all of our vendors to slash their prices by 20%, was really only thinking from the perspective of what works for me, not thinking about the us, not thinking about how do we add value, how do we cooperatively tackle this.
Yeah. I think we're seeing that a lot, especially with some of the larger corporations, right? Where, just like you said, their approach, and then just the backlash to that insensitivity at this time, and that will be remembered when this is over.
The emotion that I've had, the heated conversations with a couple of people that have gotten these letters, they're livid.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Saying, well, here's a company that's 20 times or 50 times our size, and now they want me as the little guy to help them get through it. Yeah. That's rich.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, so I just want to be mindful of our time. I know we started a little late. Thanks for sticking with us, Marty, and for the participants. I do want to, this kind of came to mind, and I want to talk to this before we kind of wrap up. But I know that what I have seen from the community and what I've observed is that sometimes we say the wrong thing, right? We're not going to get it right all the time. I can think of, one, what do I want to call them? An influencer here in the market that I'm in, who under duress, he put something out on social media, and he's typically extremely well loved and respected and appreciated. And under duress, he made a comment around that he's tired of staying in and he's just going to go out. And the backlash that he received in that situation, right. He's not an entrepreneur, but I think that it's important. I noticed this too with another influencer from Ontario who, in the middle of a live chat, she was talking about her biggest problem that night was going to be to decide what she was going to drink, right? What wine she was going to choose. And so
that's a legitimate problem.
I think that, again, under duress, we're not going to get it right all the time. We are going to make mistakes. We're going to say the wrong things. Do you have suggestions or advice that if we take a wrong step somewhere, if we make a wrong turn, what do you think we should do in that situation? Like, how do we own up to that?
Well, I think it's two steps. The first one is, just as you said, own up to it. Be fast to go, you know what? I didn't really think about that. That was reactive. I was wrong. I think too often people, much like a PR campaign, or I think of politicians, where they don't really want to say they're wrong. They want to blame it on a different group, or they want to try and reword it. I think history's taught us that when people just step up and put their hand up and say, I made that mistake, I was wrong, and then moving on. The second piece of that is own it and then stop talking about it. Too often people that get pulled into this ongoing conversation. So I think if I'm an influencer and I've got a typical stream of content I'm pushing, yeah, I've made a mistake, I've made a misstep, own it, make it very public. I apologize that, and then move on to back to your content, back to where you're adding value, where you are sending a message out that's positive and helpful. Um, Inevitably, with social media and with people having an awful lot of time at home to be able to nitpick things, there's always somebody who is got all day long to be online arguing back and forth with you. And so I think once you've owned that apology, move on, because nothing good comes from the ongoing debate afterwards. So that's
Yeah.
my experience with clients has been the best.
Beautiful. I think so. Whether it's online, and I gave the example of two online situations, but I think even if it's not online, right? If it's with your clients or if it's with your employees, and you said the wrong thing, or you did the wrong thing, or you reacted, I have a tendency to react instead of logically thinking everything through. So it's about coming back and just saying, just like you said, it's taking ownership. The other piece, though, and weigh in on this, I think I've always noticed it's about being very clear with what my intentions were. I made a mistake. What I intended to say was this, and we have no control over how others will interpret our words and our actions. But I think that clarification of what I meant to say is this, and yeah, I take ownership, and it was wrong.
Totally agree. That actually, you're right. That the problem with tweets, the problem with letters on an Instagram post, the problem with your blog is that people read it one way. I mean, the same way that we've always had that. Well, I sent you an email, and somebody gets it and goes, "Oh, so you're upset about this?" No, and they read the emotion and intent into it. I think you're right. The clarity of this is what I meant. Clearly, it didn't come across that way. I've worded it wrong. Owning your communication. Yeah, that's a great approach. People can't foul you if you own it.
Okay. So what I'm hearing out of all of this, Marty, is that you mentioned it, the three big words here. So whether it's clients, whether it's employees, whether it's suppliers, help, engage, and deliver, right? Like those three, like show up powerfully in those spaces. The engagement is the communication piece, right? And potentially as your operations, like you said, start to go down, the communication should be going up.
Go up, yeah.
Right? And so that is, those are really powerful tips going forward. Anything that you want to leave us with? Some, I don't want to put you on the spot with parting words of wisdoms, but anything that you think is important for us to know? Are there any questions that I didn't ask you that you really wanted to speak to today?
Well, you and I could probably talk. I mean, there's all sorts of other things I run through my head as we're talking. Like, your numbers in your business. You should know your margins before you adjust price. We could talk about that, but I think my big takeaway, and I talk about this in my book. I worked with a good friend of mine, Ben, and Ben used to say, "Hey, business is people." And I, for years, was like, yeah, I get it. They all come in the morning, they leave, right? Blah, blah, blah. But I realized really, in a significant way that through hard times and even through good times, that every business doesn't run without the people. I mean, there's no organization in the world from Coca-Cola on down that doesn't run without people. And so if your main focus is taking care of the people around you and doing that with real intention, with that sense of help and authenticity, you can't help but have a more successful weathering of this storm than the people that are worried about price, delivery, margins, the other things that, yes, are part of the business, but they're not the focus today.
Yeah. No, people first, right? People first. So, so Marty, are you okay if I post your contact information in our blog so people can reach out to you? And your book is Tiger by the Tail, right? And 99, was it 99 strategies? Walk me through that one.
Yeah, it's 99 secrets to tame and master your business.
Beautiful. And would those 99 secrets apply now through COVID?
Yeah, secret 28, I think it is, or 58 was the idea of you can't control everything, so plan for the worst. So there's lots of, I didn't necessarily name what the pandemic was going to be, but yeah, I really accumulated 99 ideas on the basis that if I was talking to a business owner, what are the things that clients over the years have said? Well, how do you know that? Well, you just learn it. And those sort of, well, how come my accountant hasn't told me that? So all of those things I've learned through owning multiple companies. That's really what it is there's 99 short lessons there.
Beautiful.
And then on the website, there's tools and stuff to be able to download and use as well.
Beautiful. So I'll be sure to post those in the blog, the link to the book, as well as some of the link to the tools. And is the book on Audible?
It is. Yep.
It
It
is.
just
Perfect.
came out about a month ago.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. There will be a recording of the session if you're okay with that, Marty. We're going to
Absolutely
put this into a recording. I know there are many people who wanted to participate this morning, but the timing didn't work for them. So we'll make that available for you. It'll be on the Epiphany website. Make sure to continue connecting with one another. I'll also put Marty's contact information, so reach out to him.
Yeah, feel free to reach out to me.
Beautiful. And again, my apologies. I take full ownership of the glitch this morning, that Google Hangout. My intention was to make sure the Zoom was number one, but thank you. I apologize, Marty, for that.
No
and
problem.
The participants here. Nicole, thank you for being here. Thank you, all of you. And everybody stay safe, stay strong out there, stay financially fierce. I love that advice on pricing. I'm going to have to reconsider some of my strategies, I'll be honest with you. And you stay well, Marty. We'll speak with you soon. So great to see you again.
Thanks so much. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.